freedom matters. Here we are, well into the 21st century, and half of the world's population makes less than $2 a day. 3 billion people on this planet have never used a telephone. And if we would travel the world, what we would see more than we'd want to see is so many folks barefoot, following an ox cart, uploading for a living instead of downloading for a living. How could this be? Well, this could be because freedom is an aberration, prosperity is an aberration, and poverty is the natural condition. Poverty is easy. Let's look at it. In 1688, John Locke wrote all kinds of books talking about freedom. Freedom is the mainspring of economic prosperity. Freedom is a virus for which there is no antidote. Freedom is a country's best investment. So Locke wrote on freedom and freedom. And then he talks about freedom of religion and freedom of the press and freedom to own and operate a business and on and on. But then in 1688, his magnus opus, he comes and he says, all right, I've spent my life writing about freedom. What is the prerequisite for freedom? And John Locke's answer was private ownership and protected property rights. Do you want freedom of religion? Only if you can buy the church, build a church, and worship there, and it's yours. Private ownership leads to freedom of religion. Freedom of the press, same thing. You own the press, you own the building, hey, there you go, freedom of the press. Someone else owns it, don't tell me that there is freedom of the press. So John Locke wrote on that, and our founding fathers bought into what John Locke had to say. And so we go a couple hundred years of economic growth under a more of a freedom paradigm. But then in the late 19th century, Karl Marx writes his book, Das Kapital. And Karl Marx threw overboard everything that John Locke said. Karl Marx said, no, freedom is, private ownership is not the prerequisite for freedom. He said, we want to abolish private ownership. And so we now move to socialism, and as we go into the 20th century, every single country gave it a try. Maybe Karl Marx is right. Maybe this will work. And so as we look at the 20th century, communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, populism, one of the isms. And they tried and tried to make it work. But it's impossible. Because as John Locke said, when you're wrong about property, you're wrong about everything. And so we had an economic experiment right at the end of the 20th century that drove the nail in the coffin. Is it John Locke and private ownership and property and freedom? Or is it Karl Marx, the abolition of private ownership and socialism? The economic experiment was Berlin. Step into West Berlin. West Berlin, vibrant with economic activity. You go through Checkpoint Charlie, guns, dogs, moats. Now you're 100 yards away from where you were. East Berlin, gray, drab. Not many goods on the shelves, not many cars on the streets. You come back 100 yards through Checkpoint Charlie, West Berlin, vibrant. Stop, stop. This is all one city. These are all Germans, for heaven's sakes. How can there be such a marked contrast between West Berlin and East Berlin? All Germans. Answer, because in West Berlin there was freedom. Freedom really is the mainspring of economic prosperity. We jump to another part of the world, North Korea, South Korea. They're all Koreans. It's all one country. How can it be that in South Korea there's $20,000 to $22,000 of annual per capita income, and in North Korea the income is so low it's like zero. You can't measure zero. The marked contrast between the way the North Koreans live and the South Koreans live, you can't overemphasize it. What's the difference? What's the difference? In South Korea, there's freedom. In North Korea, there is not. If there's any statement that can be made, it is that freedom really is the mainspring of economic prosperity.